What are you ready to let go of? Let me ask you something that I want you to sit with for a moment before you answer. Not in your head, in your body. What are you holding on to that's no longer yours to carry? What are you holding on to that could be holding you back? Because there's a version of you, maybe a version that's been buried under years of responsibility, of holding it together, of being needed, that knows the answer to that question, that's known it for a while. And if part of what's happening in your body right now, the weight, the fatigue, the feeling of being stuck, is simply the accumulation of everything you've never put down. There's a line I keep coming back to. Through working with ladies and exploring the relationship between the mind, their past, and their body, we don't just carry our stress in our thoughts. We carry it in our tissue, in our cells, in the way our jaw tightens, in our shoulders live up near our ears, and our belly holds a kind of bracing that never really quite releases. The body is a record, a faithful, detailed record of everything we've been through. And here's the question that changes everything. What if you didn't have to carry it anymore? Not what if you could lose the weight, but what if you could put down the weight, the internal weight, the story that says you're not enough, or I'm wrong, or I'm bad, or I'm not loved. The guilt you've been carrying for years about things you did or didn't do, and the experiences that you had, especially as a child. The grief you haven't let yourself feel because you've been too busy keeping everyone else afloat. Just allow yourself to imagine this. What would it feel like to put that down? I talk to women every day who've been on every plan, followed every protocol, done everything right, and still nothing shifts until we go deeper. What we find every time is that the body is holding something that hasn't been acknowledged yet, something that needs to be felt and understood before it can be released. It's not about finding some buried wound and deciding that that's the reason for everything that's happened. It's simpler than that. It's about asking your body, what do you need me to hear? And then, and this is the part that takes courage, actually listening. Letting go doesn't always look like a breakthrough moment. Sometimes it can look like finally crying in the shower. Sometimes it's writing a 3-page journal at midnight. Sometimes it's talking to the one person who feels safe to you. Sometimes it's just sitting quietly and allowing yourself to feel the weight of everything that's running through you, instead of running from it. The running is exhausting, and I think you already know that. But what if you stopped running, just for today? What if you turned around and looked at what's been following you and said, I see you, I know you're there, and I'm not afraid of you anymore. This is what I've seen in the ladies I work with, and even in my own life. When we stop fighting what's inside, and we stop operating from that place of the messages inside us, we stop needing to armor ourselves on the outside. When we process what's been stored, the body can start to release what it no longer needs to protect. When we grieve what needs to be grieved, there becomes a space, a real physical cellular space for something new. It's not magic, it's the most ordinary human ancient truth there is. You are allowed to let go. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to feel it and name it, and then gently and in your own time, put it down. The weight that you're carrying is not your destiny, it's your history. And history can be released. The event and the events that we subconsciously continue to hold on to and create stories about has ended, but the suffering is continuing on. But where the suffering is continuing is in our mind. The event has gone past, it's no longer affecting us, but we carry on the stories by means of dialogue and internal chatter. That's where the suffering exists. When we understand this and we can attach it to the conditioning and the wiring from our past and the stories and messages that we gave ourselves of I'm not enough, I'm not loved, I'm at fault, I'm not accepted, then we can understand they were our reality, they felt real at the time, but they were never a truth. And if they weren't true then, that you weren't enough, that you weren't loved, then they're not true now. And once we can see that and understand that, we can then start living from a place of I am enough. And when you ask yourself, what could be different and what could exist for me and what would be available to me if I lived from a place of I am enough, I am loved, I'm not wrong? What would change for us subconsciously if we no longer ran the same dialogue in our head, which was triggered from a past event? Once we were able to release that and didn't continue the suffering in our mind, what becomes possible on the other side of that? And next week, I'm going to talk about this in even more depth, and I think you're going to like what you hear.